much. Before I start, on behalf of the Waterfront Development Committee and City Council, there's a lot of the City Councilors here this evening, if not all of them, and they listened to your comments as well, because the Waterfront Development Committee, whatever happens there, will be bringing a report back to City Council, and they make a final decision and everything. So it's important to voice your opinion, and I heard a lot of good discussion here tonight and this afternoon. And it's encouraging to see the numbers, because we have a lot of public forums where we don't get a lot of attendance, and this is very encouraging. So thank you very much on behalf of the council. And don't be afraid to talk to councilors that are here too. Fill their ear. I know I just done a lot of it, so. Not the first time either. Anyway, we broke, our table broke it up into 3 areas, and the first one was east of the complex. And we had 11 against development along there at 1-4. And that 1-4 was consistent in the 3 areas that we went through. And some of the reasons for this is the obvious parking issues. They said there's not enough parking spaces now, you'll be reducing them. Another people said you should be selling public land. Public land should be for the public. And then worried about the development, the water view be affected by development on there. And other question was waterfront for all residents, not just a few. So that was the first area. So that was pretty adamant. We were the table was against the area east of the city complex. Then we went to the oil tank area, and there was mixed reviews on that one. We had 4 people against development. There was 7 for development, but on the northern part, not below where the T-ball diamonds are. And there was one person that didn't have an opinion. We were rushing at that point, so I don't think she really get into the dialogue. So we were for development on the oil tank areas, and there was reservations there too. They're worried about the developer paying for any cost to decommission that property and get into the proper standards. And again, not on T-ball diamonds. Then we looked at Lookout Point, and there was 9 against development on Lookout Point, and 2 for. And what they were talking about was road access to make sure that people were able to get down to the Lookout Point. And if you haven't been down there, you should take a drive down and have a look. It's a very beautiful part of our waterfront. And go down, get a picnic or bring a couple of chairs. It's just great. I know I take my bike and I go down there and just sit. And it's a good place to go and just contemplate life. It's fantastic. And they said this is for the residents, not for developers. So the residents to have amenities down there for the residents so they can enjoy it. Again, we didn't talk about the ribbon, but you really should look at that ribbon. It was a great idea from the Waterfront Development Committee to look and say that space is for non-development at all. So thank you very much, and thank you for coming in.
Thanks, Frank. Second last table over there, Chris's table. You're the reporter, Chris? He is. Just thought I'd pick on Chris for a minute.
There was a very interesting discussion at the table. I basically sat in the background and listened, and I tried to put the thoughts together in some kind of format that we could follow as a group. It was interesting to see that a lot of people at the table thought that it would be great to have some year-round activity. In other words, it'd be nice to have somewhere to go and have something to do near the water. And if something was built, they would like that building to take advantage of the views. But basically public access rooms, not necessarily private space. But even more specifically, it was talked about a mixed use. In other words, the main floor would have possibly some main floor commercial, or we could have year-round services, either public or not. You could have restaurant, coffee shop, etc., banquet hall. In other words, so that the main floor would be available to everybody. And then if there was any other development, residential or otherwise, it would be above it. Some even said that some level of development, water development, would simply be a sign of the times. It was also mentioned that the water use, we should take advantage of the fact that we have the river there in order to rent canoes and have that type of rental, all tied into the same basic principle. The things that they did not want is something that was purely residential use. Also, it was mentioned they didn't want the blocking of the views that would come from the north side of Water Street, the old Cy Miller site. But the bottom line is that when the question was asked if you were for or against some development, we didn't get into too specific, but some level of development, 7 for, 3 against. On the second site, it was harder to get a consensus because it was hard to differentiate between the different places, and what cluttered the discussion but made it not as clear is the fact that the T-ball sites are so important, and it was nice to see the kids that were here, by the way. And we're doing all of this for you. It's your generation we want to make it. And it's obvious that it's very, very paramount to keep the T-ball activities close to the other activities, because don't keep them all together. And I'm sure the Waterfront Committee would never consider relocating it in a way that would split it. So we heard loud and clear that it's paramount for the entire program to keep everybody together. You start with the T-ball programs and the parent concern, most popular program, and you move on.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just seeing if there's anything to wrap up. But as far we couldn't get a consensus on the other side. Yes, madam?
I'd just like to clarify that T-ball diamonds are part of Legion Park. There's 7 ball diamonds, and the 3 to the left of Bergeron Drive are for these children, and that is why they're here, because it's their future, and it is part of the diamonds. So I guess there's been some miscommunication over there at your table, actually, sir, that the T-ball diamonds and the Coach Pitch diamonds are not part of this, and your yellow area actually includes our parking lot, our clubhouse, and those 3 diamonds. So that should be clarified. Thank you.
In closing, I just want to mention, I expect to see this level of reaction, because let's face it, the waterfront is our #1 most important asset. And when somebody's tugging and recommending a change to the most important asset, you're going to see a lot of reaction. And this is what you get. And this is why we're here, because we need to see that reaction. We need to hear every single point of view. That's how we can make an informed decision and possibly make an informed recommendation to council. And you heard earlier, they get the final say. We just prepare recommendations, we do the background work, and then council answers to the general public. Again, thank you for coming.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, our table by the gentleman from council here was told that the yellow area did not include the ball diamonds. Thank you.
Sorry,
That's what I interpreted.
what I said was, for the purpose of our discussions at the table, it was for the oil tank areas only, didn't include the T-ball environment. So that's what the discussion on the table was just for the oil tank area, not the T-ball area. So I didn't misinform anybody.
Thank you. We'll get out. Yes, sir. We have one more report. You wish to comment on that one? Yep, Bill?
Mr. Moderator, just so that there is no confusion, what is the eastern boundary? Again, I think it was confused even this afternoon. Mr. Alexander, what is the eastern boundary and the western boundary of Lamoureux Park, according to the 207 plan that I have in my hand? Just for clarification so people understand. Thank you.
Okay, I'll use this. I think what I need to do is introduce 2 terms here. So the west and eastern boundary of the area identified in the 2007 Waterfront Plan as the Lamoureux Park kind of planning district, is the way I described it, goes from the area of the existing snow dump to Bergeron Lane, which is this location right here. So the matters west of there are the ball diamonds, Marine 200, and we go there. the T-ball area and the oil tank lands are east of there. I think a little bit of the confusion is what people would take to be Lamoureux Park proper. In other words, if you ask an average community member, where is Lamoureux Park, they would expect that that's kind of from the complex going westerly to this area. So the main area of the focus, the thing where the activities happen in the park, that's what people would take to be Lamoureux Park proper. But because we don't want any discontinuity in the planning districts, it goes to, for the purpose of the waterfront plan, goes as far as Bergeron Lane. That help?
At one time, is that not all Crown land from Lamoureux Park? At one time, was Lamoureux Park Crown land?
You saw an old slide of the canal area down here, and that, that's the canal going westerly. Because it was a transportation corridor for Canada, it was a canal operated by the federal government. Yes, the answer is absolutely. It was all federal land. In around, I can't give you an exact date, but in around the late 60s, early 70s, chunks of that land were transferred to the city. And the council of the day and a group at that time petitioned the federal government to give the city what was then, what became Lamoureux Park. So the large areas of the park that are out there that the city owns were at one point federal government land.
So the park and the ball diamonds are owned by the city right now?
No, there is a slide. We can try it up here, but there's two slides, equal slides down here that shows land ownership patterns, right? So the city owns, you see where this is, there's various colored areas here, but the city owns the area that is uncolored. So the city owns to a line here, and that line is about top of slope between the parking lot and going down into the marina. So the city owns that outright. The city has a lease on this parcel, about 28 acres, as I just kind of draw a boundary there, above the marina where the main baseball diamonds are. The city has a lease on that property. It's owned by Public Works Canada. The city has a lease for 99 years, started in about 1984. So technically the city doesn't own that. It has a very strong interest. You can imagine a lease on a property for 99 years is about as close as you can get to owning it without owning it. As we move then to further areas here, you're into areas that are owned by the federal government, and the city doesn't have. The city has some interest in some leases in these areas for bike paths, but this is more direct ownership, and the city has an amalgam of several kind of leases. The only other thing I'll point out is this darker green area here is a remnant of the federal government wanting to protect the corridor for potential all-Canadian seaways. One of the reasons the bridge is as high as it is because back in the 1950s, the federal government protected the corridor to be able to twin the seaway. That was abandoned in the early 2000s. But that is parts of a corridor that continue to be protected, are expected to be given up at some point.